Welcome to Busted Speakers. I'm Alex.
I'm Cam.
And I'm Ed.
And we just hit 100 subscribers!
Yes! Such a milestone! We did it! We did it, you guys!
Yes!
But da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da.
We've been working for so many years! It's finally paying off!
We actually reached it like 4 weeks ago.
Yeah, that's true. But we were on a little hiatus.
Yeah, that's true. We actually reached it while we were on hiatus, and we were thinking a little bit about if we were going to do anything for it. 100 is a fair milestone, but it's not exactly, 10,000 or something. But you know what? Any milestone we can get, we're grateful for. Thanks, everyone, for subscribing to the channel. Thanks for, just clicking it, because it's you independently clicking that has brought us here.
Mm-hmm.
And I can only thank you humbly from the bottom of my heart. I'm sure Ed and Cam feel the same.
Yeah, thanks for listening, even the people who listen for a minute and a half and then dip because they don't think long-form content has any value.
Damn, say it how it is.
I guess we got a long ways to go in terms of our content, but it's stepping stones. I think the stuff we make now is definitely better than when we were, using crappy inbuilt mics and not really planning anything, at least.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm very grateful for everyone who even gives us a shot, I guess.
I might like to go back to the kind of editing that Kush was doing back in the original days, like fading images in and out through the whole thing, especially when talking about something slightly off topic. But, I like to think that for the moment we've traded the visual element for drastically improved audio quality.
It's fair to say, yeah.
Yeah, kind of flimsy, but Kush, wherever you are, we love you.
We salute you.
You're welcome back anytime, buddy.
Anyway, what we decided to do was, something kind of novel. We decided we're going to attempt to tackle what we could call our top 10 favourite bands. Now, that's an important distinction. Bands.
Mm-hmm.
It's not top 10 artists. We are just focusing on bands or band units. So I guess it could have 2 members, but not any one-member bands. Because we're actually planning to focus on solo artists in another video, hopefully, down the line. So yeah, take us away, Cam.
I always feel weird about doing stuff like this because it's just not something that my brain does automatically. Like, yes, I listen to them the most. They have to be in the top 10. I just look at it and I'm just like, do I really like this band more than that band? And
the problem with it is you are kind of forcibly compiling and categorizing stuff that is just on a surface level, a sort of enjoyment thing that you don't really want analytical data about. You don't want these set in stone, could change at any point.
Yeah, exactly.
But this is just something fun, and we couldn't think of anything better, guys. Come on.
I'm kind of with Cam as well, where, yeah, my brain just doesn't work this way, but to me, like Alex said, it's just a bit of fun. So, as long as we don't take it super seriously and our picks make sense to us, then that's the best we can hope for.
Yeah. Just one other thing that I feel like I should note. Not all of these bands have albums that I would consider all-time favorites. There's at least 3 bands who have 1 album each that have rated 5 stars, and they're not on the list just because, the rest of their discography just doesn't quite get them to the point of some of these other bands.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So, number 10, I have to give it to Sigur.
Oh yeah, nice.
One of the most unique bands I've ever heard. I haven't gotten super deep into the whole realm of post-rock. They're one of those bands who don't even like the label that's been assigned to them. But I just haven't heard any other band that sounds like them. And they have one of my all-time favorite songs, like a top 3 at least, with Sleater-Kinney from their album Tak. I don't speak Icelandic, so I don't know if I'm pronouncing any of this even remotely correctly. Yeah, it's gorgeous. I've been using it as my alarm clock song for 3 years, and I never get tired of it. The title translates to Lost at Sea, and it really does feel like a song that moves from gentle calm to a billowing storm and being pulled under the waves, finally coming up, resurfacing, just finding your way back to the ship, I guess. I don't know.
And that's how you wake up every morning.
Yeah. You don't know what my dreams are like, man.
That's a good pick, though.
Yeah.
I definitely need to explore them more, I gotta say.
All right, Ed?
Okay, my number 10 pick, and I'll just say quickly, I have not given much thought to like the specific order of this. There's a general rhythm to it that they, have a stronger discography as I go further up my list. But these are just 10 bands that I really love and mean a lot to me.
You just ordered them in a way that makes sense to you. Nothing wrong with that.
Absolutely. But just because one is above another, it doesn't necessarily mean I think that band is better. Because, one band could have one album I absolutely love and a bunch of trash ones. One band could have, a number of albums that I really love. I don't know.
Exactly. It's what you deem valid.
Yeah. Anyway. So my number 10 pick is a band who are really well respected and liked, but I actually consider them quite underrated, and that is Battles.
Nice. Battles. Nice.
Yeah. This is a band that's certainly somewhere on the math rock spectrum, but aren't really a traditional band of that genre, as they've always had a very recognizable and I think very easily digestible formula that really sets them apart from a lot of much more uncompromising and difficult bands of that genre. And I think they've always been in their own lane, even on their lesser albums, and in spite of essentially shedding their lineup with each subsequent release for the most part, to the point where they're now just the duo of Ian Williams on synths and guitar, and the absolute beast that is John Stanier on drums, one of my favourite drummers.
Oh, this was the band you were saying that's like been reduced to a duo.
Yeah. We were joking earlier about like a duo is allowed here, and it's like, well, Battles was a 5-piece band and now they're down to 2 members.
Yeah.
I would say their 2 best albums, and the ones I recommend starting with that I'll talk about just a little, are the more proggy and experimental debut Mirrored, which has some excellent lengthier cuts like Atlas, Rainbow, and Tonto, as well as quick blasts of experimental rock that are anchored by the very idiosyncratic vocal delivery of their, at the time, frontman Tyondai Braxton. And my favourite album of theirs, which to this day I think is a supremely underrated album. They lost Tyondai on this one, but the effervescent production quality, the bonkers smorgasbord of guest vocal features, and the wonderful pacing and instrumentation on the album Gloss Drop has kept me coming back to it for almost a decade at this point. I absolutely adore that album. It's one of my favourite rock albums in general. It's just incredibly fun music, really engaging, strange melodies that are also really catchy. Awesome vocal features. You've got the likes of Gary Newman on there, and the singer of Boredoms as well contributes a really wild and yelpy vocal feature towards the end.
Yamasuka Ai.
Yes.
Nice.
Really
Probably
memorable.
Butchered that, but yeah.
Among others, Yeah, Gloss Drop, amazing album. Mirrored, amazing album. I'm not huge on the instrumental album they put out, La Di Da Di, but again, some really good songs on there like the Yabba, and the album they dropped last year, which we didn't cover, I actually thought was a surprising bounce back into really fun, feature-based math rock music that was literally just John and Ian doing their thing,
Yeah.
Recommend that album a lot, honestly. I feel like that one's kind of underrated as well, but really it's their first 2 albums that cement them as one of my favourite bands. In summary, I'd describe them as serious fun. They're very technical, but never at the expense of sheer viscera, whether they're riding a bombastic groove or going for something more subtle and incremental. So yeah, what's your number 10 pick, Alex?
Okay, so this is one that just edged by because of a recent release. My number 10 is actually The Flaming Lips.
All right.
Ooh, very nice.
American Head just edges them in there.
Yeah.
It's that good that they upend to would have put here. So make of that what you will. Anyway, The Flaming Lips, we spoke about them recently on the American Head review, and I won't go too much into them because you can listen to that, of why they're so appealing and wonderful at large, but basically, some of the best expansive psychedelic wonderment, just some of the most delightful melodies you'll ever find. Experimented out the yazoo, obviously, especially with the Dark Ages 2010s, but in general, they've experimented enough that they're always worth looking out for. They're one of the bands that the deeper you dig in, you always find crazy B-sides or weird projects that you didn't even know they were involved with. Basically, if you love this band, you'll never be short of stuff to check out. I love them. They have some of my favourite albums with the Soft Bulletin, Yoshimi Battles of Pink Robots, Clouds Taste Metallic, Embryonic, The Terror, American Head. So much to love. And they're only at number 10.
Very nice.
Next, number 9, Cam.
Number 9 for me is going to be the Talking Heads.
Oh, nice.
They're one of those bands that have just always had this kind of weird mystique for me, just like the way people always talked about Remain in Light, and that was the first album of theirs that I heard, and it did not disappoint in the slightest. And then I just lucked into finding the rest of their first 4 at various record shops. Really interesting hearing them evolve from CBGB. Can't even really call them punk necessarily, because I mean, I guess like early punk and art punk was just like everybody doing whatever they wanted until, you know, scenes were established and whatever.
Before New Wave became like a really mainstream genre in the early 80s, it was almost as crazy and out there as punk, if they were called New Wave. Mm-hmm. It's hard to even categorize or label the Talking Heads.
A lot of people put the Zolo tag on them as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's mostly from the Fear Music and Remain in Light albums. But yeah, and then David Byrne has just become one of the most fascinating figures to me. I try to pick up all of his solo albums. I bought the Criterion Collection release of his movie True Stories, which of course the Talking Heads reluctantly did an album for.
Yeah.
Great movie.
Yeah, it is. It's really interesting. I just love knowing that this band, you know, shared the stage with Blondie and the Ramones. It's just so great to me.
Yeah, looking into early CBGBs is legendary stuff.
Yeah. All right, Ed, you're number 9. Number 9?
Number 9? My number 9 pick is probably a similarly idiosyncratic choice to my previous pick, but I don't think they're necessarily an obscure band by any means. It's They Might Be Giants, the two Johns.
Nice.
Flansburgh and Linnell. Yeah, this pick does come with the slight caveat that I'm only really basing it on their first 4 albums out of God knows how many there are in their discography at this point.
It's a legendary run, though.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it's that run from 86 to 92 that I consider to be one of my absolute favourite streaks in music history. And they're one of my favourite bands ever because of that, among many other reasons, even though I don't regard much of what they've released since on quite the same level.
You mean you don't like the children's music albums?
Well, I haven't even dipped into those, but I'm sure they're good for what they are, you know?
Yeah.
I just think after they got a full band, they kind of lost some of the soul that those first 4 albums have. But yeah, the self-titled, Flood, and Apollo 18 are all amazing albums in their own right, and I couldn't recommend any of them enough, but my absolute favourite they released is Lincoln, which executes their formula so masterfully and with such a potent and distinct sense of joy and just random chaotic humor that never really seems pretentious or like, you know, difficult to get down with. It just floors me every time I hear it.
Another duo band, I see.
That's true. They're a band that's often dismissed as novelty, but I don't know. I feel like there's such a sense of care and passion, even in their most piss-takey moments, that I feel like it's even a stretch to describe them as comedy rock, let alone a novelty band. And that's before we've even brought songs like Birdhouse in Your Soul, Anna Eng, Don't Let's Start, and They'll Need a Crane into the equation, which are all really beautiful and in some cases very thoughtful and philosophical tunes that I'll never say no to hearing. The sheer musicality of the band, their experimentation, their sense of humour, wonderful sense of melody, and distinct brand of drum machine fuckery, among many other things, have had me addicted to those first 4 albums in particular for years, and I can't imagine ever getting tired of them. I feel like it's no easy feat to include the line, "No one in the world ever gets what they want, and that is beautiful. Everyone dies frustrated and sad, and that is beautiful," in a song, and have it come across as entirely genuine when you're a band that I'd regularly describe as hilarious and dorky. They were just that good at doing what they did, at striking a balance between silliness and genuine care and quality and precision, that they made it work. Definitely a dorky band, definitely an acquired taste, but absolutely one of my favourites. So yeah, Alex, what's your number 9 pick?
My number 9 pick is Depeche Mode. These guys basically have some of my favourite production, atmospherics, and instrumental setups and progressions of any band I've ever heard. Basically starting as a kind of dorky new wave synth pop band.
Just can't get enough.
Yeah, that sort of era, which is fun. That's fun. That definitely factors in positively here. But once Alan Wilder joins, Martin Gore comes in as his own, as a fully fledged amazing songwriter, as Dave Gann fully flexes his vocal talents. They just progress so beautifully into one of the best bands ever, I think. Their specific run from about, and this is quite a long run really, from 84 to, you could even extend it to like 97 and 2005's Playing the Angel. Some of the most satisfying keyboard chord progressions ever, some of the catchiest songs ever, some of the best vocal performances ever. Sort of pioneers of industrial music within the commercial aspect. Quite sensual, seductive songs, but done really well as well. It's an inexplicable fit. It's hard to fully quantify into words the effects they have. I just get a really good feeling when I listen to them. So yeah, Depeche Mode.
I've got to say as well, I bet you Depeche Mode would be in my top 10 if I'd actually sat down to listen to their albums, because I own most of them digitally, especially all the ones from that run that you mentioned, Alex. And whenever I hear their music out of context, I just think, these are going to be one of my favorite bands, right? Because like every song is so great from what I've heard. Yeah. And crucially for synth music of that time, not dated as well.
That's exactly it, especially when you think synth music from the 80s. They, like, dominated the 80s. Like, you could say People Are People is a little bit corny and dated, but honestly, instrumentally, it's such a forerunner for just industrial music within a pop song that I can't knock it. It's honestly amazing to me.
Yeah, thanks for reminding me. I really need to listen to their albums, finally.
I think there'll be a lot of that in this.
Yeah.
We'll just be, oh yeah, I need to try that band. Number 8, Cam?
Number 8, I think I have to give it to Animal Collective.
Solid pick there.
Yep. They're the most modern, acclaimed band that I've come around on the hardest, because when I first heard them, I didn't like anything about them. It took me an eternity to get into Merriweather Post Pavilion. I think I was just like listening to it on Spotify, and then I also made the mistake of listening to Spirit They've Gone, Spirit They've Vanished really early on, and I've still never made it through that album. That thing gives me a panic attack every time I try.
Yeah, some of the noise parts of it are quite overbearing. I fucking love that album though.
Yeah, but like I picked up, why can't I think of it? The EP that was released right after Merriweather.
Oh, Fall Be Kind.
Yes, Fall Be Kind. Fall Be Kind. I picked that up at a record shop just randomly, and I love that thing. What Would I Want, Sky is one of my like top 5 Animal Collective songs. And after that, they released Centipede Hurts, and I picked that up, and it was the first record of theirs that held my attention all the way through.
Wow.
So it was my favorite for a bit, but then I came around on Merriweather, and then I found Strawberry Jam, and that took me a while, but over time that one's actually become my favorite of theirs.
That's my favorite too.
Yeah, it's just like such a great run of tracks in the middle. There's only like 2 songs from that I might cut.
But then any album with fireworks on it, man.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah, Fireworks and Fishbone, or Bonefish.
Peacebone.
I'm an idiot. I don't have the titles right in front of me.
They do say Bonefish on it, to be fair.
I'm dumb. I needed to have iTunes open while I'm doing this. But yeah, and, I have gotten into the like folkier stuff a little bit more.
Some tongues and stuff like that.
Yeah, and
Fields.
The campfire songs, and
yeah.
Here Comes the Indian. I still haven't quite gotten into the very early stuff, like I mentioned. There's still plenty I haven't heard, not least of all because they've kind of become one of those modestly annoying groups who does most of their releases on vinyl. It's like vinyl exclusive, and then they release it digital, and there's never a CD, and it's like, well, screw me, I guess.
I didn't actually know that.
Yeah, like there's at least a couple of things that they've released that haven't been on CD yet. I still like pretty much everything I've heard by their solo and side projects. And even Painting With, I don't think is, the worst thing ever.
Mm-hmm.
They're just, one of those groups that is constantly evolving. They're never satisfied to stay in one place. They've released a couple of great albums and a bunch of great songs. And always look forward to what they're releasing next, even if it turns out not to be great.
Yeah, I'd say this decade is not as strong for them as the previous decade, but they've not like completely fallen off or anything. I can see why people don't like Centipede and Painting With as much. And I've not even heard Tangerine Reef yet, I'm not going to lie to you. I mean, I consider them one of my favorite bands, but at that point I just didn't prioritize that release as much from what I heard about it. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm always excited to hear what they do next as well.
All right, so what's your number 8?
My number 8 is another band who've definitely carved out their own lane, particularly in alternative rock music, and they're also pioneers of the feminist punk movement in the 90s, and just a really great trio of musicians whose interplay really just does it for me. Sleater-Kinney.
Yeah, nice one.
Again, maybe a slight caveat. This band went on hiatus for 10 years from 2005 to the mid-2010s, and I do like the album that they came back with, No Cities to Love, but their last album, I think, is easily the worst album they've released. We didn't cover that either, it came out last year. There's a little bit to divulge on there, but I'll talk about why I like them first. Albums like the brash and punchy Dig Me Out and the more emotionally charged The Hot Rock are some of my favourites of the 90s, and they just have a style that's unmistakable to me. I understand Carrie Brownstein and Corin Tucker's yelpy vocal style being something of an acquired taste, but it really appeals to me personally and fits their distinctly angular guitar work perfectly most of the time. They're also really interesting and unique in their lineup in how they essentially got by without a bassist the whole time. It's just two guitarists, Corin and Carrie, and their drummer Janet Weiss, who unfortunately left the band after the last album over a dispute over the direction their music was taking, which, if you listen to the album, there's definitely indications that she was kind of put in the background to an extent with the things they were going for on that one, and I can understand why she left. But having said that, even with one of my absolute favourite drummers out of the picture, the legacy she and her bandmates have left behind is nothing to be sneered at. I think they have a really great run of pretty essential albums, starting with 96's Call the Doctor, and with subsequent releases all the way up to a decade later when they released their initial final album before going on that hiatus I mentioned. An album which I consider to be one of the best rock records ever made, The Woods. I think despite how much I'm really into their previous work, it was this album that really cemented them as one of my favourite bands, and given how it really pushes the boundaries of their songwriting and sound, with help from the bonkers engineering of Dave Fridman from The Flaming Lips, who Alex mentioned. It's just great. He took their usual approach and just maxed it out with the amazingly hyper-compressed mixing style he's known for. And I'm not surprised they called it quits after that album, because it is basically a masterful refinement and an elevation of the band's style and their formula that would have been hard to follow up on right off the bat. Like I say, I'm not as big a fan of the two albums they released since coming back from that hiatus, but yeah, I wouldn't hesitate to call them one of my favourite bands in general. If you're going to listen to any album by them, I'd say probably make it Dig Me Out, but then make your way to The Woods, because The Woods is an album that I think appeals to a lot of people who aren't even fans of their previous stuff, because it's one of the loudest and most bonkers rock records of the last couple of decades. But yeah, high praise there for Sleater-Kinney. I hope I justified it.
Yeah, I've never even made the connection that Fridman producing that one. And, like, there's parts of that actually, I've never made this connection before because I didn't even really remember that. But some parts of that War with Mystics, the album the Flaming Lips did the next year, actually vaguely reminded me of that.
Yeah, the distorted guitars is something he really refined on that record, yeah.
Interesting. Now, to a lot of people, this might seem quite low for this band. I mean, I'm still giving them 8th place out of every band ever, but I'm going to give it 8 to the Rolling Stones. Obviously, there's a lot to unpack here. Basically, could just be straight up called the best rock band ever by some. You know, definitely one of the most well-known and iconic. I'm not putting them in there for that. I'm putting them in there because I've genuinely enjoyed their music for about 9-10 years. I have pretty much heard every album by them. There's 2 from the 80s I haven't heard that much, which are Undercover and that other one, Dirty Work. great album, that. No. Okay, aside from Undercover and Dirty Work, I consider every album they've put out to be pretty much worthwhile checking out. There's great tracks throughout, but taking that all away, they went from pretty much the premier British blues rock-infused band in the very early 60s to a rock band that definitely at least rivaled the Beatles to, for no reason at all, like it was not within them, making some of the best psychedelic rock songs ever, to then furthering their blues rock legendary sound with 4 of the best rock albums I've ever heard in Beggar's Banquet, Let It Bleed, Sticky Fingers, and Exile on Main Street, continuing a pretty solid for anyone else run in the 70s. I can honestly think of about 50 classics from them. They're enduring. Mick is one of the best vocalists I've ever heard. Can't even talk about Brian Jones, man. He's just one of the most inventive people of the 60s when it comes to introducing new stuff to their sound. Mick Taylor was great when he was in the band. Keith obviously is amazing too on the guitar. Whole band, great to follow. They've meant a lot to me. I've listened to a lot of interviews and like live shows of them. Yeah, just an enduring favourite band of mine. I really like them.
Well, as someone who like has no experience with the band, you've definitely justified your appreciation of them. And you were right about this definitely making us feel bad about having not heard or at least me, you know, it's making me think, oh, I should really go and listen to them, honestly.
I do like the Stones. I have the Stones in Mono CD box. I wouldn't rank them among my favorites, but yeah, I mean, I wouldn't argue with anyone who says they're the best British rock band ever.
There's an argument to be made,
yeah.
And they're by far my favourite that have like incorporated blues elements to the level they have, like compared to others. Well, I won't say who because they still could be in the band.
Yeah, and they were also like always eager to, you know, throw respect on their influences, Muddy Waters and all the great bluesmen.
Exactly, and you know, as the years went on, they are one of the only bands from the 60s to like genuinely continue disco and new wave and incorporated it reasonably well in their sound without sounding too embarrassing. I feel I don't have to justify it further personally. I just really love them.
They're a very well-loved band. I'm sure a lot of people listening will understand.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really need to listen to them personally.
Now we're on to number 7 pick, Cam.
These guys might be another contender for one of the best British rock bands. I have to give it to Pink Floyd.
Nice.
Oh, yeah. Nice.
I think this was just in the chat with you guys. We were talking after the Flaming Lips. I said that I don't really love the Terror and Embryonic as much as you guys do, but then you said, you know, that's just because, you know, the Lips are one of those bands where, you know, you can pick, like, they have just so many different distinct eras that you can pick pretty much any of them, and there's somebody who's going to be a fan of them.
That's true.
And, you know, Pink Floyd definitely are one of those bands. You can have the early psychedelic stuff, like, I mean, the Barrett years.
Then there's, like, the Wilderness years after Barrett.
Yeah, then the 4-album run that they had in the early 70s is just my favorite period of theirs, and even though it's probably the most obvious of Dark Side of the Moon, Wish You Were Here, Animals, and The Wall, not necessarily in that order. And it's not even in the early 70s. The Wall's like 79, wasn't it?
I think so.
Yeah, just like
the only one in early 70s would be Dark Side, I guess.
So yeah, just
say 70s, eh?
Yeah. Just a killer decade for any band, and like my ordering of those 4 records would definitely be controversial among Floyd fans, but screw you. It's definitely unique. It's definitely me, my sequence, and I do have, I think, all of their albums except the Final Cut, and do understand what people like about, you know, the earlier stuff, but that's just not what I love, not what I gravitate to Pink Floyd for. My favorite album of theirs is Animals, and I just love the guitar work on that album. It freaking screams like again, nothing I've ever heard before.
Yeah, I'd say Animals and Wish You Were Here, definitely my favorites, but there's a lot of merit to be found in The Wall specifically because it's such a unique and personal project, a very conceptual and self-referential album.
Yeah, and I hate people who just write it off as, you know, being famous sucks the album.
Yeah.
I have no patience for that attitude.
a lot more to it than that.
Yeah, there's like an inherent egoism to it, but I think it's something that's explored and deconstructed in a nuanced way and in a musically entertaining way as well, you know?
It's a very brave album.
Yeah, I'd say so. I only actually got into that one recently, but I liked it way more than I thought I was going to, honestly. But yeah, great band.
Ed, your number 7?
Yeah, my number 7 pick is going to be the band AJJ.
Yep.
They're formerly known by another name, which it's an abbreviation of, but I don't know, they don't affiliate with that name anymore, so I don't think there's any reason to bring it up, really. But yeah, this is a really personal band to me who I got into, I think, in my college years, in like 2013, 2014 sort of time, and kind of changed my life in a way. Saying that about them, you'd think, oh, only number 7, but I don't know, I just love a lot of music, so number 7 is a really high prestigious spot, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're a folk punk band, which is not a very well explored genre, but I'd say they're definitely pioneers in that front, and the frontman Sean Burnett is one of my favourite songwriters ever. His earlier material with the band sort of deliberately channels an almost nihilistic sense of humour into delivering greater socio-political messages and also existentialist commentary and self-reflection in a manner that is oftentimes hilarious, sweet, and very memorable. With recent albums starting with the very transitionary record Christmas Island, which I don't love but has songs that I love on it, that songwriting style has mostly shifted into something more abstract and self-reflective, and also self-referential to the earlier work in a kind of roundabout way. And as a result of that, I can understand why a lot of people have fallen off of their work after falling in love with those earlier albums, which, don't get me wrong, still comprise my favourite work by the band, that being the 3-album streak from People Who Can Eat People Are the Luckiest People in the World through to the album Can't Maintain, and then probably my favourite record of theirs, Knife Man, which I think exhibits a really versatile range of song styles from like straight up pop punk to rowdy punk rages to, you know, shorter singer-songwriter type stuff, and then a few genuine epic songs towards the end, as overused as that word is. I just love that album through and through. I think that sense of humor is just great. Like, I just love the energy of this band. And as much as people seem to really hate their recent work, I don't think they've ever really released a bad or even mediocre album since they broke out with that People Who Can Eat People album. Again, I get why people fell off, but even this year, we didn't cover it, but they released an album, Good Luck Everybody, that turned out to be very disturbingly prescient to what ended up happening socio-politically this year. There's a few sort of anti-Trump sentiments on the record that made people cringe for whatever reason, even though that's a completely agreeable stance to me. But also the entire sentiment of, you know, good luck, we're going into this like insane era in, you know, human history. They obviously weren't aware that COVID was going to happen when they recorded it, but it kind of ended up being really prescient in that way. And again, just a good display of their versatility as a band, because I think he switched up his songwriting style yet again on that record.
I need to listen to more of their stuff. Like, I've only heard People Who Can Eat People Are the Luckiest People, and the Bible too.
Yeah.
Definitely a lot more I need to hear.
Yeah. If you're one of those people who's just like, oh, they've gone all social justice warrior, whatever. I mean, you know, the band wrote the song American Tune on Knife Man, and everyone loves that song, and that's very much echoing the same sort of radical ideologies that they've been sort of exhibiting in their music for ages. I guess now that they're just more upfront about it, people don't really like to see it. Obviously, I'm pigeonholing people there, but on Rate Your Music particularly, their recent albums like The Bible 2 and the new one are just monstrably low rated. I just don't get it, honestly. I think they're both great albums.
Yep.
But yeah, I really love this band. There's so much more I could say about them, so many individual tracks I could pick out, but I'll just say, listen to People, listen to Can't Maintain, definitely listen to Knife Man, and make your way through the rest of their discography from there, because they're a really great band. And your number 7, Alex?
Well, it's going to have to be Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds.
Another one that I need to listen to. God damn you, Alex.
I don't know, we've just chosen different things to listen to. I haven't listened to the AGG albums.
That's true, but Nick Cave, definitely a much more canonized artist, in fairness.
Swings and roundabouts, I guess. What to say about this guy? And it's not just the guy, this is a band. The Bad Seeds are a proper full band unit that have changed quite a bit over the years, but it's, some of the same people from the start. It's changed quite a bit. I think it's at its lowest member point just now, but I think it's still 5 or 6 members. But yeah, coming in from the birthday party, they still had elements of that early on in the mid to late 80s, and eventually started incorporating bluesy elements in. And then out of nowhere in the early 90s, just became alternative rock. Well, I say out of nowhere. They also had the really excellent album The Good Son, which was already more melancholic. Basically, this is an extremely interesting band with one of my all-time favourite songwriters and vocalists in Nick Cave, who I guess could be seen as an acquired taste. He's got quite a ominous baritone timbre to his voice, but also quite soothing and reliable. I first got into him with the Push the Sky Away album in 2013. I don't know, I think I literally just saw it in Q magazine, if you remember that magazine, Ed.
I do.
I can't knock them too much. They helped me discover some great stuff, I guess.
Yeah.
That album was reviewed and basically fell in love with it. Great sort of ambient, abstract, poetic material on there. And then I just explored backwards. Like I say, at the start of the 90s, it became more alternative rock. And then somehow it became more singer-songwriter piano rock centric. Basically, he's had one of the most interesting discographies of all time and has remained so consistent throughout.
Yeah, it's still going strong, right?
Still going strong. Ghosteen, which we did review last year, actually.
Skeleton Tree as well.
Skeleton Tree, I'd mention that as one of the best albums of the last decade, in my opinion.
Damn.
Along with Push the Sky Away and Ghosteen. You can probably tell I'm a bit biased, but there's something so unique, so reliable, so heartwarming, yet satisfying. This guy has it all. And the band back him up so great the whole time. The Bad Seeds, probably one of the most underrated band units I can ever think of, because a lot of the time Nick gets all the glory. But because you've got Warren Ellis, you've had Mick Harvey was in the band for a solid 25 plus years. Thomas Wilder, great drummer. He is their drummer. Martin P. Casey, great bassist from about 1990 onwards. Honestly, what a band. There's so many people you could mention.
Is their older material, quite dark as well?
Quite dark. There's no band like them.
I think they're definitely in my wheelhouse. I think, some of the bands that are towards the top end of my list will, show that the Bad Seeds are definitely a band I should get into, I think.
Yeah.
Just because they're in a similar lane to some of my favourites, but still just never found the time to give them a try yet, sadly.
Okay, and your number 6, Keb?
All right, my number 6 is probably going to produce the most cringe of anything on my band, or anything on my list, even accounting for some bands in the top 5 who most people probably wouldn't put anywhere near their top 100.
Well, the cringe visor is on, Cam, so go right ahead.
I'm you guys will be okay with it. They've kind of lost steam recently, but they were absolutely essential for forming my music taste when I started listening to mainstream radio all the way back in the long off years of 2004 to 2005. It's freaking Green Day.
Green Day, yeah.
It's a respectable pick, my friend.
Yep, so yeah, I got into them right during the peak of, American Idiots.
American Idiot, yeah, I was going to say.
Fame.
Right at that juncture.
Yep. Yeah, then I just kept getting into them more and more, and then looking into, American Idiot, trying to understand it. Helped me check out classic rock bands like, The Who, obviously, another rock opera bands like Pink Floyd, even though Green Day went on record saying that, Pink Floyd wasn't so much of an influence on Idiot, or really anything they've done.
Yeah.
And I really can't fault any of their 90s albums. I think that they're all great. Even Nimrod, which tends to be overlooked, I think. People remember it as either or the one with Hitchin' a Ride, or more likely the one with Good Riddance, Time of Your Life. And I really don't think that's fair. I think that that album has some of their strongest lyrical playfulness. Like, one of my favorite things about them is just Billy Joe's ability to turn a phrase on its head and just like run with it for an entire song. And Hitchin' a Ride is a great example of that, but there's other killer tracks on that album.
Good pick, and honestly, quite a consistent discography to a point.
Mm-hmm.
My favourite album by them is actually probably Warning.
Yeah, Warning is definitely an overlooked gem.
Yeah.
Obviously, we covered their newest record this year, which probably doesn't play much into how much you like them, Cam, I'm guessing.
No, like, and nothing from 2009 onward really factors in for me. Like, I need to listen to Revolution Radio again, but I remember it being kind of underwhelming.
It's got some okay songs on it. It's probably their best post-American Idiot album for me.
Yeah, all right. And then just real quick, I would kick myself if I didn't just mention Dookie, because obviously that's, you know, the one that put Green Day on the map.
Well, that's a landmark 90s album.
That one is just a hair underneath American Idiot for my favorite. If you want pure Green Day, that's the one you probably reach for. But yeah, for its impact on my life, I have to list American Idiot higher, personally.
Fair enough.
Yep. And then, Ed, your number 6?
My number 6 pick is arguably the founding fathers of prog rock. Probably already know who I'm talking about. King Crimson.
Ah.
Very good pick.
We've mentioned a few bands throughout this list, more so you, Alex, I think, and you as well, Cam, actually, who have, like, multiple phases to their career, and that's absolutely the case with King Crimson. It was a group that was very much anchored by frontman Robert Fripp. He was just this incredible guitar player, like, unbelievable. If you watch this guy play, I don't know, there's just something about his playing style that just blows me away. Not to say that the rest of the instrumentation on their albums doesn't live up to his vision. If anything, there's a sense of sort of unified energy on their best work between all of the instrumentation that results in some of the best prog music ever.
Yeah.
Man, there's maybe 3 bands off the top of my head who've released 2 5-star albums each, in my opinion. I never give anything 5 stars, so that speaks to that to an extent, but I'm just really unforgiving with my ratings, I suppose. But one of them is King Crimson, because they released their debut in the Court of the Crimson King in 1969, and oh my god, that album has not aged a day. It is still one of the most impressive pieces of music ever. Every single track on it's amazing. Yes, even Moonchild is great, in my opinion.
It is.
It's, you know, the weakest track on the album. They definitely veer into what some might consider a bit more pretentious territory on that track, because they literally just sort of mess about on it for a while, but all the other compositions on the album feel very considered, but also very organic. We've all seen that album cover, iconic as hell. You got songs like 21st Century Schizoid Man, just unbelievable jazz rock, prog fusion, absolutely insane, multifaceted music. The songs are pretty damn long, but always justify their length. I Talk to the Wind is one of the most beautiful songs I've ever heard, and I love the mellotron on that song. And something about Epitaph and the title track as well. Like, I have no shame in admitting I've cried to those songs, like, many times, just completely involuntarily.
No judgment here.
Like, not even wallowing in anything that was going on in my life, just from the sheer power of the music, just the sheer emotion of it, it just really makes me emotional to this day. You know, I've been listening to that album for years. There's definitely some caveats to this pick, because I think albums like Lizard, Islands, and In the Wake of Poseidon are not great, and they do reiterate a lot of ideas of what Fripp was trying to do. I get a sense that he had a lot of frustration in sort of guiding his musical trajectory in a way with the other band members around him, you know, just leaving the band and re-entering, you know, at such a pace that the only other band that probably lives up to that is probably The Fall.
Oh yeah.
In terms of lineup changes. But that's the thing, each lineup change really brought a new dynamic to the band in a way. Like, Lizard is quite different from Court, and then Lark's Tongues in Aspic and that era of music is really different. It has way more heavy, but also more acoustic songs.
Starless and Bible Black as well.
Yeah. So there's definitely some King Crimson albums that I love more than others, but the other one that I'd give 5 stars to is Red, which is just an amazing album that basically, from what I understand, birthed the grunge guitar tone, but implements it in this like jazzy prog rock context, this hard rock context as well, that is just amazing. And the songs on it are so good. The song Starless, I can never really definitively point at things like this, but I can in this particular case. The last minute of Starless is a strong contender for my favorite piece of music ever recorded, and I don't say that lightly.
Hey, the whole song's one of the best songs ever.
It really is, but the way it builds up to that last minute and just how it feels to listen to, I can't even describe it. It's just unbelievable. Like, I can't even describe it. Please just listen to Red by King Crimson if you've not heard it. I'm sure a lot of people listening have heard their debut, but definitely listen to Red as well.
I feel like it's almost as iconic.
I'd say so, yeah. But then, having said that, they then moved into a almost Talking Heads-esque era with Discipline, Beat, and Three of a Perfect Pair. And I'm not huge on the latter 2 records there, but the album Discipline is another really great one, where they brought in Adrian Belew, who shares a lot in common with David Byrne, honestly, in his vocal delivery. But they're still a very different band. Like, what Fripp brought to the table is very different from the type of music Talking Heads were making, but they were definitely in a similar lane.
A lot of credit has to be given to like Bill Bruford as well.
That's true.
One of the best drummers ever.
Man, just amazing band. Like, I've probably gone on about them more than any other pick because it's almost like several bands in one with how many phases they've been through.
And how much does the 90s stuff play in, if at all?
I actually haven't got that far yet because I've just spent so many years.
Oh, that says a lot of what you've heard already.
Yeah, I've heard all of their albums up until Thrack. I still have to hear Construction of Light, Power to Believe, and Thrack as well. So, I don't know. But those are, highly regarded albums as well. Maybe not among their discography, but just generally speaking, for any band, they're still pretty well-rated albums. So I'm looking forward to hearing them. But yeah, even though they have some misses for me, they have such a variety of amazing progressive music that I just love. And thankfully, Fripp for ages was really against his music being accessible. And thankfully now, as much as I hate Spotify and, how they underpay artists, it is much easier to find King Crimson's music now in high quality because they finally put it on streaming services last year. So if anyone has been looking to get into this band, there you go. There's not really any excuses there. And your number 6 pick, Alex?
It's going to be Fleetwood Mac.
Nice.
Cool.
I'm specifically kind of focusing on the 75 to 87 run, but to be fair, I've heard a lot of the Peter Green stuff, and that honestly probably helps to give them a placement here as high as number 6, because stuff like Oh Well, Albatross,
Black Magic Woman
by far, The Green Man, Alicia, Coming Your Way. There's a lot of good early blues rock classics, and then there's a lot of underrated early 70s stuff as well. Bob Welch era, you've got the Bare Trees album, you've got Mystery to Me, you've got Penguin. There's gems hidden all over. Cam actually knows that era a bit better than me. You can confirm that there's a lot of gems to be found in the early 70s stuff, right?
Oh yeah, the original version of Sentimental Lady is like one of my favorite songs ever. And honestly, I think it's like essential listening if you're trying to make up your mind on Fleetwood Mac.
Yeah, like this is again another band that has a lot of eras to it. So even those 2 eras by themselves make them quite a good band. But then obviously you get the classic lineup of Mick Fleetwood, John McVie, Christine McVie, Stevie Nicks, and Lindsey Buckingham, who make 5 really good albums: the self-titled, Rumours, Tusk, Mirage, Tango in the Night. All 5 of them big favourites of mine. Obviously, we have actually covered Rumours recently on a What's the Best Track on. where we discuss a few tracks on there and how great they are.
Amazing album.
It is. You have to think, these are 3 of my favourite vocalists, some of my favourite written songs, some of the catchiest pop rock songs ever. Honestly, there's something so endearing and catchy about them. They've only just grown in my graces over the time I've known them. Like, yeah, for a while I just had rumours and thought, this is very good. This might be all I need. But then I got the self-titled album from 75, found more gems. Tusk was really the one that made me really fall in love with them. The expansiveness and creativity of that album is amazing. Some of my favourite songs from my childhood are on Tango in the Night with Everywhere and Little Lies. Some of the best songs from the 80s, honestly, on that album, which, you know, coming 10 years after Rumours with another commercial high and just personal favourite is great. Lots of gems on Mirage too. Then they've kind of got their wilderness years as well after Buckingham leaves for a little bit. But honestly, the 2003 album, even though it doesn't have Christine McVie on it, Say You Will, is quite underrated and has a lot of later career gems on it as well. So honestly, pretty much as good as Mirage for me. So yeah, Fleetwood Mac, legendary band. I respect them a lot. Very, very good stuff.